Hey, excuse me. The broom is loud. We are trying to work here. The voice was sharp, edged with a kind of irritation that usually came from heat, dehydration, or a missed shot. Monica Rhodes didn't stop immediately. She finished the long, rhythmic pull of the push broom, gathering a heavy pile of spent brass casings into a neat heap on the concrete pad. The sun beat down on the back of her neck, the California heat radiating off the range floor like a physical weight. She paused, resting one hand on the handle of the broom, and turned slowly. She was not wearing a uniform. She wore a simple royal blue top that caught the breeze, dark jeans that had seen better days, and canvas sneakers. Her long blonde hair was pulled back in a loose, somewhat messy ponytail that trailed down her back. To the uninitiated eye, or perhaps the willfully ignorant one, she looked like exactly what she was being paid to be in that moment: hired help, a civilian contractor brought in to keep the high-end private firing range clean for the elite clientele. The man speaking to her was young, fit, and practically vibrating with testosterone. He wore tan tactical pants, a fitted t-shirt that showed off the results of many hours in the gym, and a baseball cap pulled low. A pristine Mech 13 Mod 7 sniper rifle sat on the bench rest in front of him. He wasn't alone. Two other men dressed similarly stood behind him, arms crossed, watching the interaction with bored amusement. They had the look of men who had recently earned a trident and were still riding the high of being the apex predators of the military ecosystem. "You need to clear the line, sweetheart," the shooter said, gesturing vaguely with a gloved hand toward the administration building behind them. "We have the range booked for another hour. You can come back and play janitor when we're done." Monica looked at him. She didn't squint against the sun, and she didn't flinch at the tone. Her eyes were a cool, unsettling gray. "I was told the range went cold at 1400 for maintenance," she said. Her voice was low, lacking the apologetic lilt he evidently expected. "I have a schedule to keep, just like you." The shooter, whose gear bag identified him as Miller, laughed. It was a short, barking sound. "Maintenance means fixing targets, not squeaking up brass while we are trying to focus on long-range ballistics. This is precision work. It requires concentration. The sound of you scratching that broom against the concrete is throwing off my game." Monica glanced at the target monitor sitting on the bench next to his rifle. The digital screen showed a grouping at 800 yards. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't precision. The shots were drifting right, a classic sign of misreading the spindrift or failing to account for the crosswind gusting intermittently from the ocean. "Your game is off because you're favoring your trigger pull, and you aren't accounting for the Coriolis effect at this latitude," Monica said. She said it casually, as if she were commenting on the weather, and turned back to her pile of brass. "And the wind picked up 2 minutes ago. You didn't adjust." The silence that followed was absolute. The hum of the cicadas in the scrub brush seemed to get louder. Miller stared at her, his mouth slightly open. The two men behind him straightened up. Their bored expressions were replaced by confusion. "Excuse me?" Miller asked, his voice dropping an octave, moving from annoyance to genuine anger. "What did you just say to me?" "I said, you're pulling your shots," Monica said, sweeping another pile of brass into the dustpan. She stood up and dumped the casings into a 5-gallon bucket with a loud metallic crash. "And you're rude." Miller stood up from the bench. He was tall, looming over her, using his physical presence as an intimidation tactic. It was a move he had likely learned in the teams, designed to make insurgents or uncooperative locals back down. "Listen, lady, I don't know who you think you are or what kind of Call of Duty trivia you memorized to impress the guys down at the dive bar, but you need to walk away right now. This is a restricted area for operators, not for the cleaning lady." Monica didn't back up. She didn't even shift her weight. She just looked at the rifle sitting on the bench. It was a beautiful piece of machinery, a surgeon's tool. She knew the weight of it. She knew the smell of the bore cleaner used to maintain it. For a fraction of a second, the sunny California range vanished. The smell of sagebrush was replaced by the scent of burning trash and open sewage. The bright blue sky turned into the oppressive gray of a pre-dawn twilight in the Hindu Kush. She felt the heavy, reassuring kick of a similar stock against her shoulder, saw the pink mist in her scope, and heard the voice of her spotter calling out a correction. It was a ghost sensation, a flash echo of a life that felt like it belonged to a stranger, yet lived in her marrow. The memory vanished as quickly as it came, pushed aside by Miller's finger pointing in her face. "Are you deaf?" Miller snapped. "Get lost or I'm calling the range and having you banned from the premises." "I am the range master," a gravelly voice boomed from the shaded patio area 50 yards back. Miller spun around. An older man, heavy-set with a white beard and a limp, was walking toward them.
"It was Chief Henderson.
a retired Master Chief who ran the facility. He looked tired, but his eyes were sharp. Miller relaxed slightly, assuming an ally had arrived. "Chief, this woman is interfering with training. She's refusing to clear the deck. We're trying to dial in for deployment, and she's giving me backtalk about ballistics." Henderson stopped a few feet away. He looked at Miller, then he looked at Monica. He didn't say anything to her. He just looked at the brass bucket, then back at Miller. "She's doing her job, Miller," Henderson said. "Schedule says maintenance starts now. You guys ran long. Pack it up." Miller bristled. He wasn't used to being told no. "We're not done. I haven't qualified on this platform yet. My DO is breathing down my neck to get this dope chart finalized before we ship out. I need 10 more minutes. Make her wait." Henderson looked at Monica again. There was a subtle exchange between them, a microscopic nod from Monica that only Henderson saw. "Let him shoot," Monica said. She leaned the broom against the concrete pillar. "If he thinks the broom is the reason he can't hit the broadside of a barn, let's remove the variable. I'll wait." Miller let out a scoff of disbelief. "Broadside of a barn? You're talking about a sub-memo target at 800 yards. You have no idea what you're talking about. I know that you're dialing 4.2 milledegrees of elevation when you should be at 4.4 because the temperature has risen 10 degrees since you started shooting this morning," Monica said. "Powder burns faster when it's hot. Velocity increases, your point of impact shifts." Miller stared at her. He looked at his turret. He looked at his dope card taped to the stock of the rifle. He had indeed dialed 4.2. "You're guessing," Miller muttered. "Shoot," Monica said. "Prove me wrong." The challenge hung in the air. It wasn't just about the schedule anymore. It was about ego. It was about the hierarchy that Miller believed in, the one where men with tritons stood at the top and women with brooms stood at the bottom. He sat back down at the bench, adjusted his position, and pressed his cheek to the stock. He took a deep breath, exhaled halfway, and squeezed the trigger. The crack of the rifle split the air. Monica didn't need to look at the monitor. She heard the impact, or rather the lack of the specific ring of steel she was expecting. A second later, the spotter behind Miller checked the scope. "High and right," the spotter muttered. "Miss." Miller slammed his hand on the bench. "It's the barrel. It's overheating." "It's the shooter," Monica said softly. Miller spun around in the chair, his face flushed red. "You want to run your mouth? You think this is easy?" He stood up and gestured to the rifle. "Go ahead. Since you're the expert, since you know so much about velocity and spin drift, you show me." One of the other SEALs chuckled nervously. "Miller, don't do this, man. Just pack it up." "No," Miller said, his eyes locked on Monica. "She wants to critique. Let's see if she can back it up. I bet she's never even held a rifle that weighs more than a hairdryer." Monica looked at the rifle. She looked at Miller. Then she looked past him toward the parking lot. A black SUV had just pulled up. She recognized the vehicle. It belonged to Commander Sterling, the commanding officer of the team these men belonged to. He was likely coming to check on his boys. She knew she should walk away. She was retired. She was out. She had nothing to prove to a child with a badge he hadn't finished earning the respect for. But then she looked at Miller's sneer, the absolute certainty in his eyes that she was incompetent because of who she was and what she was wearing, and she decided she wasn't retired enough to let that slide. "You want me to shoot?" she asked.
"I want you to try," Miller said, crossing his arms. "And when you miss and the kick knocks you on your ass, I want you to apologize for wasting my time and then get back to sweeping." Monica walked to the bench. She moved differently now. The slouch was gone. The casual air of the janitor evaporated. She moved with economy and purpose. She sat down on the bench, not awkwardly, but as if the seat had been molded for her body. She reached out and touched the rifle, her hands calloused from manual labor, moved over the controls with a fluidity that Miller blinked. She checked the chamber, verified the magazine, and then adjusted the scope. She didn't look at the dope card. She reached up and clicked the elevation turret up 2 clicks. She reached for the windage knob and dialed in a correction for a wind that Miller hadn't even felt on his cheek. She pulled the royal blue top strap up slightly so the buttstock wouldn't chafe her skin. She settled in behind the gun. Behind them, the doors of the black SUV opened. Commander Sterling stepped out, flanked by his Master Chief. They started walking toward the firing line, looking serious. Henderson, the rangemaster, intercepted them. He put a hand on Sterling's chest to stop him. He pointed toward the bench. "What is going on?" Sterling asked, squinting. "Is that a civilian on the gun?" "Watch," Henderson said. "Just watch." Miller didn't see his He was too focused on mocking Monica. "Don't close your eyes when you pull the trigger, sweetheart. It's going to be loud." Monica ignored him. Her world had narrowed down to the circle of glass in front of her eye. The reticle was an old friend. She regulated her breathing, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Her heart rate slowed. She could feel the pulse in her thumb against the stock, and she waited between beats. She found the target, a white steel plate, 18 by 18 inches, 800 yards away. At that distance, it looked like a postage stamp. The mirage was boiling off the ground, making the target dance. She read the boil. The wind was moving right to left at the muzzle, but left to right at the target. A fishtail wind, tricky. She made a micro-adjustment to her hold. Miller opened his mouth to make another crack about how long she was taking. Monica squeezed the trigger. The rifle roared. The recoil pushed her shoulder back, but her body absorbed it perfectly, rocking with the energy rather than fighting it. She cycled the bolt instantly. It was a violent mechanical snap-clack that happened so fast it blurred. Ding! The faint sound of the bullet impacting steel drifted back to them a second later. Miller's jaw dropped. He looked at the monitor. Dead center. Luck, he whispered. Monica didn't look up. She was already back on the scope. She tracked the vapor trail in her mind.
She fired again. Crack. She cycled the bolt. Snap. Clack. Ding. Another hit. This one was 2 inches from the first. She fired a third time. Crack. Snap. Clack. Ding. 3 shots. 3 hits. A grouping the size of a grapefruit at 800 yards. She cleared the weapon, dropped the magazine, and locked the bolt back. The rifle was safe. She stood up, the adrenaline tapering off instantly, returning her to the calm, collected state of the woman with the broom. She looked at Miller. His face was pale. The arrogance had been wiped clean, replaced by a profound confusion and a dawning horror that he had made a terrible mistake. "Variable wind," Monica said quietly. "You were holding left edge. You needed to hold left edge and favor high because the updraft from the canyon comes into play at 1400 hours." She turned to walk away and saw Commander Sterling and the Master Chief standing 10 feet away. They had seen everything. Miller saw them too. He snapped to attention so fast he nearly tripped over the bench. "Commander, we were just—" "At ease, Miller," Sterling said. His voice was like ice. He walked past Miller, ignoring him completely, and stopped in front of Monica. He looked her up and down, taking in the civilian clothes, the messy hair, the broom leaning against the pillar. Then slowly, deliberately, the commander of the SEAL team brought his hand up and rendered a crisp, respectful salute. Miller's eyes bugged out. Officers did not salute civilians. It didn't happen. Monica hesitated for a moment, then straightened her posture. She didn't salute back. She wasn't in uniform, but she nodded, a gesture of mutual respect between warriors. "Good to see you, Rhodes," Sterling said. "I heard you were in the area. Didn't know you were working for Henderson." "Keeps me busy, sir," Monica said. "Keeps the bills paid." Sterling turned to Miller. "Do you know who this is, petty officer?" Miller stammered. "No, sir. She said she was the cleaning crew." Sterling shook his head, a look of profound disappointment on his face. "This is Monica Rhodes. Before she retired, she was the lead marksmanship instructor for the advanced sniper course. Before that, she was attached to Task Force Blue as a cultural support team operator and designated marksman. She has more confirmed kills at ranges over 1,000 yards than your entire platoon combined." The silence on the range was deafening. Miller looked at Monica with a mixture of awe and terror. He had heard the stories. Everyone in the community had heard the stories of the Valkyrie, who had provided overwatch for the teams in the worst valleys of Kunar. He just had never put a face to the name, and he certainly never expected that face to belong to the woman sweeping up his brass. "She is the only woman to ever clean the impeccably difficult Naval Special Warfare Sniper course with a perfect score," Sterling continued, his voice raising so the other men could hear. "And you treated her like a servant." Miller looked at the ground. "I didn't know, sir." "You didn't look," Sterling corrected. "You saw a woman with a broom and you made an assumption. And that assumption just cost you your dignity."
In the field, that assumption costs lives. You underestimated a potential threat, or in this case, a potential asset, based on bias. That is a failure of situational awareness. Sterling turned back to Monica. "I apologize for his behavior, Rhodes. They're young. They think the trident makes them gods. They haven't learned yet that the bullet doesn't care about the patch on your shoulder." Monica shrugged, picking up her broom. "It's fine, Commander. Everyone needs a humility check now and then. Better he gets it here than downrange." She looked at Miller. He looked small now, stripped of his bravado. "Miller," Monica said. "Yes, ma'am," Miller said, his voice cracking slightly. "Your third shot, the one you missed. You were jerking the trigger. You're anticipating the recoil because you're afraid of the gun. Respect the recoil. Don't fear it. It's physics, not a punishment." "Yes, ma'am," Miller said. "Thank you, ma'am." "And Miller?" "Yes, ma'am." "You're sweeping the range for the next week," Monica said, holding out the broom. Miller looked at the commander. Sterling just crossed his arms and nodded. Miller took the broom. Monica dusted her hands off on her jeans. She walked over to her bucket of brass, picked it up with ease, and headed toward the shed. As she passed the Master Chief, he winked at her. "Still got it, Ghost," he murmured. "Never lost it," she whispered back. The sun was starting to dip lower, casting long shadows across the range. The heat was breaking. Just a little. Monica walked into the cool darkness of the storage shed and set the bucket down. She leaned against the workbench and let out a long breath. Her hands were trembling just a tiny bit, not from fear and not from the weight of the bucket, but from the memory of the recoil. It was a dangerous thing touching the dragon again. It woke things up that she had spent years trying to put to sleep. But as she looked out the window and saw Miller awkwardly pushing the broom, struggling to get the pile of brass as neat as she had made it, she smiled. She wasn't just a janitor. She wasn't just a woman in a royal blue top. She was a standard, and today she had reminded them that standards don't lower themselves for anyone. The door to the shed opened, and Henderson walked in. He handed her a cold bottle of water. "Nice shooting, Tex," he said. "Little rusty," she admitted, cracking the cap. "Rusty," Henderson snorted. "You put 3 rounds in a teacup at half a mile with a rifle you've never touched before. If that's rusty, I'd hate to see you polished." He leaned against the doorframe. "Sterling wants to offer you a job. Real job. Instructor cadre. Said he needs someone to teach these kids how to actually shoot instead of just posing for Instagram." Monica took a long drink of water. She watched Miller out on the concrete. He had stopped sweeping and was looking at the target monitor, shaking his head, likely replaying the impossible shots in his mind. "Tell him I'm happy where I am," Monica said. "I like the quiet. And besides, someone has to keep this place clean."
Henderson laughed. "You're a stubborn woman, Rhodes." Monica smiled. "That's what kept me alive, Chief." She finished her water and tossed the bottle into the recycling bin. She checked her watch. It was 14:30. She was behind schedule. She walked back out onto the range. Miller froze as she approached. He gripped the broom tighter. "Relax, Miller," she said. "You're missing the spots near the benches." She walked past him toward the line of targets that needed pasting. As she passed, she paused. "And Miller." "Yes, ma'am." "Tomorrow, bring your logbook. If you're going to be sweeping my range, I might as well teach you how to read the wind while you're at it." Miller looked up, surprise and gratitude washing over his face. He stood a little taller. "Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am." Monica walked down range, the heat rising in waves off the tarmac. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. She knew the lesson had landed. The brass was swept, the ego was checked, and the standard remained. The wind kicked up again, blowing a strand of blonde hair across her face. She tucked it behind her ear, eyes scanning the horizon, always watching, always calculating, always ready. The unassuming hero, hidden in plain sight, wearing royal blue and carrying the weight of a legend she never asked for, but carried with grace. The story of Monica Rhodes is a reminder that valor doesn't always wear a uniform, and competence isn't defined by gender or appearance. True expertise speaks for itself, often in a whisper that drowns out the loudest shouting. The aftermath at the range was subtle but permanent. The culture shifted.
It wasn't immediate, but the story of the janitor sniper circulated through the teams. New guys showing up to the range started treating the civilian staff with a lot more respect, never knowing if the person emptying the trash bin was a former Tier 1 operator who could outshoot them with one eye closed. Miller kept his word. He swept the range every day for a week, and true to her word, Monica spent 20 minutes each afternoon teaching him the dark arts of long-range ballistics, the things that aren't in the manuals, the things you only learn when you're cold, tired, and terrified in the mountains of a foreign land. 6 months later, Miller deployed on a ridge in a hostile valley. His squad was pinned down. The wind was howling, a chaotic mess of updrafts and crosswinds. His target was 900 yards out. He couldn't get a firing solution. The computer said one thing, his gut said another. Then he remembered a woman in a royal blue top standing on a hot concrete pad in California. The updraft from the canyon comes into play. He adjusted his hold, ignoring the computer. Trusting the lesson, he squeezed the trigger. The threat ended. His squad came home safe. When Miller returned to the States, the first place he went wasn't the bar. It was the range. He found Monica sweeping the brass near Lane 4. He didn't say a word. He just walked up, took the broom from her hands, and started sweeping. She watched him for a moment, saw the new weight in his eyes, the maturity that only combat brings. She saw the trident on his chest, scuffed and worn now. "Welcome back, Miller," she said softly. "Good to be back, Rhodes," he replied. They stood there for a moment in the quiet companionship of those who know. Then Monica picked up a spare broom. "Left side needs work," she said. "On it," he replied, and together they cleared the